Welcome, history fans. Today we explore the grand tale of survival and the tragic fall of Rome. While the Western Roman Empire crumbled into dust beneath the fierce hooves of ruthless invaders, the eastern half, known as Byzantium, rose from the dark ruins to shine brightly for 1,000 years. How did they survive the darkest ages of history, when their brothers were destroyed completely? Was it military might, or a web of wealth, cunning diplomacy, and deadly secret weapons? In 396, the mighty Roman Empire was officially divided into two. Emperor Theodosius I lay dying on his bed, leaving behind a fractured legacy. Born from the very same ancient roots, both realms shared one grand system of law and a single strong faith. Yet the wheel of destiny forced them down two dramatically opposite paths of fate forever. In the west, the glorious capital began sliding unstoppably into utter darkness. Vicious barbarian tribes poured across borders, shattering the ancient peace of European lands. Weary Western legionaries stood among the ruined marble, holding rusted swords in pure despair. Their former glory was but a fading memory against the relentless and brutal invasions. Meanwhile, the eastern half transformed Constantinople into a glittering beacon of majestic hope. Byzantine cataphracts, clad in shining armor, patrolled with unmatched imperial majesty. What was the true secret of their epic survival against such overwhelming historical threats? Ancient records show the answer lies within their drastic and immense economic differences. The Western economy collapsed under the crushing weight of massive and unchecked inflation. Relying heavily on slave labor, their agriculture slowly and painfully withered away. Starving peasants and exhausted captives toiled endlessly on barren and cracked, dry fields. Desperate Roman nobles wept in crumbling villas, clutching broken statues in silent agony. They watched helplessly as centuries of cultural wealth evaporated quickly into thin air. In sharp contrast, the Eastern Empire held the golden key to global wealth and prosperity. Constantinople sat perfectly at the vital crossroads of the ancient Silk Road network. Wealthy merchants proudly displayed vibrant silk rolls, surrounded by mountains of shining gold. Rivers of exotic spices and precious metals flowed endlessly into their bustling markets. This infinite financial power allowed Byzantium to purchase something truly priceless. They simply bought time, stability, and the unbreakable loyalty of their neighbors. Defensively, the geography of the West offered nothing but wide and totally open plains. Nomadic warriors easily swept across unprotected European lands with devastating speed. The Eastern realm hid safely behind the greatest military architecture ever constructed. The Theodosian Walls of Constantinople stood as a majestic and towering shield. Master architects directed thousands of workers to lift massive stone blocks to the heavens. 3 towering layers of defense and a deep water moat made the city completely impregnable. If you faced certain doom, would you hide behind walls or march out to meet your deadly enemies? While the East fortified, the West made a fatal mistake in national strategic governance. Lacking citizen soldiers, Rome was forced to hire the very barbarians they deeply feared. Mercenary generals like ruthless Odoacer gained absolute power over the Roman state. By 476, the internal Roman structure had completely rotted away. The final puppet emperor, Romulus Augustulus, cowered helplessly in the darkness. The mighty Odoacer snatched the shattered crown, looking down upon the crying boy with cold contempt. In that tragic moment, the Western Empire was swallowed by the mercenary wolves it fed. Meanwhile, the Eastern bureaucracy used a far more invisible weapon to keep themselves safe. A brilliant network of cold-blooded diplomacy and subtle espionage protected their borders. Byzantine spies, clad in shadowy cloaks, whispered poisonous lies into gullible barbarian ears. They delivered heavy bags of shining gold to incite rival tribes against one another. Constantinople defeated more enemies with strategic bribes than with iron or crimson swords. They mastered the art of manipulation, turning deadly threats into highly useful allies. Their intelligence agents mapped every single weakness of the warlords just beyond their borders.
Be there when the moon is full.
Pitting the Huns against the Goths, the emperor casually watched his enemies fall to ruin. This calculated ruthlessness ensured that barbarian armies rarely united to strike the capital. Western rulers foolishly trusted treaties, while Byzantines trusted only division and chaos. Whenever a tribal leader grew too powerful, a poisoned cup or tragic demise quickly followed. But diplomacy had limits, and when words finally failed, the East unleashed terrifying power. They possessed a weapon so devastating, it was considered a holy miracle from God himself. Greek fire, a top-secret chemical weapon, erupted violently from bronze tubes on their warships. The thick liquid flames burned ferociously on water, incinerating massive invasion fleets. Elite Byzantine operators wore thick masks to breathe amidst the choking black battlefield smoke. Arab commanders fell backward in terror as apocalyptic red fire consumed their frantic men. This incredible chemical advantage securely locked their vital waters from countless fierce invasions. The recipe for this ancient napalm was guarded so fiercely that it remains a mystery today. Any engineer who dared to whisper the formula to outsiders faced a swift and tragic ultimate end. For centuries, the Eastern Empire balanced skillfully on a dangerous edge between war and alliance. They knew survival required absolute pragmatism, discarding the outdated pride of ancient Romans. While the West faded trying to hold on to useless territories, the East strategically retreated. Byzantium traded land for precious time, consolidating military strength around the capital. This brilliant tactical flexibility kept the heart of the empire beating, while the outer limbs fell. Every single crisis was met not with blind panic, but with calculated, precise administration. The bureaucracy functioned like a flawless machine, taxing the rich to fund their massive armies. The emperor sat upon his jewel-encrusted throne, viewing the entire world as a giant chessboard. Would you sacrifice your honor and pay your enemies if it truly guaranteed your survival? The Byzantines happily paid enormous tributes to the Huns, viewing it as a business expense. To ruined Westerners, this was shameful cowardice. To the Easterners, it was brilliant statesmanship. While the barbarian kings reveled in stolen gold, the Eastern emperor slowly rebuilt his forces. When the time was right, the Byzantine war machine would strike back with devastating precision. Their armored cataphracts became the most feared and disciplined cavalry units in the medieval world. They rode into battle carrying the sacred cross, believing wholeheartedly God protected their city. This intense religious fervor united the Eastern populace in ways the fractured West could never match. The Patriarch of Constantinople and the Emperor worked hand in hand to maintain social order. To rebel against the Emperor was to rebel against heaven itself, a sin ending in tragic ruin. This centralized authority prevented disastrous civil wars that had torn the Western lands apart. In the dark ruins of Italy, local lords fought each other over scraps of moldy bread and land. But across the shining Bosphorus Strait, the rule of law remained strong and deeply respected. They meticulously compiled the Justinian Code, preserving the legal foundation of ancient justice. As Europe plunged into centuries of illiteracy and chaos, the East became a fortress of truth. Byzantine scholars bowed deeply over wooden desks, carefully writing on delicate parchment scrolls. Golden candlelight illuminated their wrinkled faces as they copied the works of Plato and Homer. They safely locked away the intellectual treasures of antiquity behind impenetrable walls. If Constantinople fell in the 5th century, the classical world would have been erased completely. There would have been no Renaissance, no revival of science, and a darker future for humanity. The city stood as a lighthouse, shining its cultural brilliance into the surrounding medieval gloom. Even the Islamic caliphates and the fierce crusaders were dazzled by its artistic magnificence. For 10 centuries, the Byzantine Empire weathered plagues, sieges, betrayals, and devastating holy wars. Their survival was not an accident of history, but a masterpiece of human resilience and will. They transformed the brute force of the Roman legions into the sharpest political mind the world had known. Their diplomats fought wars with ink and gold, saving the blood of their precious and scarce soldiers. Their engineers defied nature, creating walls to withstand earthquakes and terrifying siege engines. Their merchants dominated the global economy, turning their coins into the absolute standard of wealth. And their emperors ruled with a divine majesty that commanded awe from the freezing north to the sands. This was the true legacy of Rome, not forged in the West, but perfected in the glowing East. Even when the West was pierced, the Eastern soul endured, carrying the torch of grand civilization. They proudly called themselves the true Romans, never accepting the tragic end of their glorious past. Unlike their ancestors, they fought not to conquer the world, but simply to survive the deadly, dark storms. The brilliant minds in Constantinople knew that every empire eventually faces its sunset. So they built their society not just on fragile swords, but on the unbreakable foundation of faith. The majestic domes of their holy churches reflected the immense wealth of their unyielding spirit. Inside these sanctuaries, countless generations prayed for the eternal salvation of their mighty walls. For 10 magnificent centuries, those legendary walls held firm against the most terrifying dark sieges. From the brutal Avars to the fierce Bulgars, the city broke the spirit of every invading foe. They stood as the immovable shield of Christian Europe, absorbing heavy blows from the rising East. Without their resistance, modern Western history would be completely unrecognizable to us today. Ancient Greek and Roman texts were carefully guarded, kept safe from the destructive fires of ignorance. Wise Byzantine monks dedicated their entire lives to carefully copying these priceless sacred words. Their silent, candlelit libraries served as the ultimate intellectual vault for human knowledge. When darkness consumed the continent, the light of ancient philosophy burned brightly in the Far East. They preserved brilliant mathematical formulas, the complex medical tracts, and the epic poetry. This deep dedication to knowledge became their most generous and enduring gift to future nations. Yet the unstoppable march of time slowly eroded even the most majestic and powerful of realms. Internal political betrayals and disastrous religious schisms began to weaken their iron core. The tragic turning point arrived when they were ruthlessly betrayed by their fellow Christian knights. In 1204, the greedy Western Crusaders tragically sacked the majestic Golden City. This treacherous blow crippled the Byzantine state, draining their immense and legendary grand wealth. Though they managed to reclaim their beloved capital, the mighty empire was reduced to a shadow. The final curtain fell in 1453, facing a completely terrifying new threat. Ottoman cannons, a devastating new technology, finally shattered the invincible stone walls. The final emperor fell bravely alongside his loyal men, refusing to surrender his sacred domain. As Constantinople fell, thousands of brilliant scholars fled rapidly toward the waiting Italian shores. They carried rescued ancient manuscripts in their desperate hands, bringing the radiant light of truth with them. These fleeing minds planted the vital intellectual seeds that would finally ignite the Grand Renaissance. Did the Roman Empire truly die in the 5th century? Or did it live to birth the modern age? Their story proves a civilization's true strength is measured by its enduring cultural legacy. The West collapsed because it relied solely on raw, brute force to control a quickly changing world. The East thrived because it embraced political cunning, diplomatic brilliance, and a unified faith. They adapted well to the harsh medieval reality, turning extreme wealth into their sharpest sword. We remember Rome for invincible legions, but we must remember Byzantium for its survival. They stood as the bridge between glorious antiquity and the spectacular dawn of modern Europe. The tragedy of their eventual fall cannot erase the magnificent triumph of their ancient reign. Golden mosaics and towering architectural wonders still whisper the forgotten secrets of their past. The ghost of the Eastern Roman Empire still shapes our political and religious world today. They taught humanity that adaptation is the absolute key to surviving the most brutal storms. The grand legacy of Constantinople is a testament to the enduring power of the human mind. Even as their physical borders shrank, their immense cultural influence expanded beyond all bounds. By serving as the grand vault of classical knowledge, they effectively cheated their historical death. The ashes of the Western Empire fertilized the medieval ground, but the East provided the sun. Every time we read the ancient Greek philosophers, we owe a profound debt of gratitude to them. They were the unsung heroes of the medieval world, standing firmly against the relentless tide. Their incredible tale remains the most fascinating epic of survival in all chronicles of time. Byzantium proved that true power lies not just in armies, but in the minds of its leaders. Were their ruthless tactics justified to save their glorious empire? Tell us your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more epic history.